Welcome back to another episode of the RAG Report podcast, my daily bulletin show where I bring to you recruiters, advisors, suppliers and investors to the global recruitment industry who are prepared to give up their time to give us their intakes, their experiences on how we can all tackle COVID-19 together and come out thriving. Today, I'm super excited to be joined by Swain. For those of you that don't know, Anne is the founder and CEO of APSCo, an international trade body that represents the professional recruitment sector around the world. I've seen Anne at numerous events. She releases a daily bulletin herself called the Bite-Sized Bulletin via email, which has got some unbelievable resources and information in there. And I felt like if anyone could give us a real take on what's going on in the market today, then Anne would be the right person. Before I do get into this conversation, I want to just have a message from our sponsor, Rise Recruitment Ventures. Rise, headed up by John Coxon and Alex Elliott, are a recruitment investment business who are helping recruiters today come through the COVID-19 pandemic. Having built and sold a recruitment business in 10 years for over 20 million, these guys are not only offering capital, but experience to help the best new startup recruiters and those in the early stages of growth really capitalize on this pandemic and come through the bounce stronger. They are actively talking to new possible investments today. So if you're sat there in your recruitment business thinking, I'm not sure how we're going to get through this, or you've recently left or planning to leave and want to start a new recruitment organization, then get in touch with these guys today. That's www.riserv.co.uk. Alex and John and their team will get back to you and run you through the process. Let's get back to the episode. Anne, welcome to the RAG Report.
Thank you.
It's lovely to have you on. Absolutely delighted. I don't think we've ever actually spoken directly before, but I've seen you at so many events. I've been wondering since the start of this, right, we'll get Anne on at some point and see what's going on. And then I've been keeping an eye on your content, and it's been keeping me going, which is great. So first question, Anne, I've asked everyone so far, and we're 30 odd episodes in. What the hell is your life like right now? Paint the picture.
It's been really busy, to be honest. So if I look at it, what APSCo did at the very beginning of this, when I sent my staff home on the 17th of March, what I said to them is, I want two things to come out the other side of this. And that was one, that our members were grateful that they were APSCo members because they thought we had a great service. And the second thing was I wanted anybody who wasn't a member to be impressed with what we were doing to support our members. And so consequently, we simply ramped up from day one to make sure that instead of a weekly bulletin, it was a daily bulletin, a ton of information, a huge number of pieces of information on the resource hub available for all our members, and anyone who rings in that needs anything, they can have it. And so we've really ramped up the action. And so my days have been spent with back-to-back meetings. Remember, APSCo is in Australia, so that means meetings start pretty early, and which is pretty late in Sydney or in Melbourne, or actually wherever we're called to Perth, sometimes as well, less of a problem there. And then in Germany, before I get to the UK, we've got Singapore as well. Not so much happening in Singapore, actually. It's sort of a different scenario there. But APSCo, because of its locations all over the place, means I start early. And then it's about keeping our staff together as a group and making sure we're delivering the service. And so we really are, and we're getting great feedback. What that's meant is my days have been quite full. So often by the end of the day, I'm like totally knackered. And I have to say, I haven't thought that much about the fact there's a COVID-19 crisis. It sounds awful. But by about 5 o'clock, just when there's a minister giving us some news, because we write the bulletin after that, save it till the morning before it goes out, that's a kind of useful part of the day. And so I tend to watch that 5 o'clock bit of the news, communicate with the team about what's going out the following day and whatever. More often than not, I need to admit, having a nice gin and tonic at that stage. Really? And, I've gone through years of not really drinking during the week unless there's a particular reason to. But it seems that with this sort of scenario going on, it's felt most regularly that there has been a need for a gin and tonic, and it's been that sort of break in the day. I don't know. Are we
talking about just one, or are we talking about a few?
Well, to be honest, it's just one, because I can't let myself go beyond that. I'd love to, but I kind of don't. But my husband and I both have a gin and tonic most days, and then sort out what we're doing the following day, and then there are calls and whatever, and then it's what we're doing, going for that walk. But I have to say, there are some times that we miss out on having a walk. We've got loads of daughters, 7, only one of whom is still at home, and she's 15. So I always tease that she was socially distancing from the age of about 13, and quite likes a room and being online doing God knows what. So she should have been doing GCSEs sort of nowish.
Oh, yeah.
And so she's got the top floor. I've got the sort of middle floor. My husband's on the ground floor. So there's 3 of us, and we try and do that walk thing. We have lunch, bits and pieces kind of scenario. Try and do the walk thing, which we don't always get around to doing. And I'm really impressed by people say they cycle a zillion miles or do a whole load of Joe Wicks exercise in the morning, but sod it, I don't get around to doing most of that. And so if we do then have a walk, come back and eat. And I think there are times when I really aren't noticing. I thought I'd feel really miserable, stuck in. I'm quite sociable. But I don't think I've noticed it as much as people are talking about.
I think we adapt, don't we? I think, I mean, I love what you've said there, because I guess we're both, we're not in the same position, but we're both dealing with lots of recruiters, lots of recruitment owners as clients and members and all sorts. So the days do go faster than ever. Like I literally blink from the minute I wake up at 5:45 every day now, and I get my exercise done and all the stuff done, and then I have a bit of time before the day starts to kick in from about 8:39, and then I blink and it's 6 o'clock pretty much every day, and I'm just like, I'm grateful of that, because there's got to be people out there that aren't working, they're on furlough, there's their brains are going in overdrive, they're thinking all day about the news, and I haven't got time to do that. But so I'm really grateful for that. Well, take us back. What was it like in the first couple of weeks when it hit hard and we went into lockdown for you specifically? What sort of conversations were you having on a day-to-day at that point?
Look, I think that from the recruitment point of view, there was a bit of panic, really, and I get that. So it's slightly akin to buying a lot of toilet rolls. I think recruitment companies wanted to apply for every loan. Of course, couldn't get access to any bloody money then, but were applying for everything, wanting to do this. Some people furloughed everybody on day, as soon as they could, really. I don't want to exaggerate it. Others didn't do any of that. And I think it's changed and it's calmed down. We certainly saw the business drop off a cliff in the recruitment market, especially perm, from day one, because I think the clients were doing the same. And I think that's picked back up. So in the very early days, most of my day was spent speaking to BAs about legislation, talking about the furlough scheme, weirdly getting calls from number 10 Downing Street, actually, to ask for advice on different things from APSCo, and looking at how everything was going to work. And so in the early stages, I would say that I was heavily involved from a political point of view and policy point of view. And not only me, my team, I've got a team that are involved in that as well, but that was the big ticket. As more decisions were made, that backed off. But of course, those decisions were being made and we needed to communicate out to our members so they knew what to do. So it was a lot of broadcast in some ways. For our members. It was a lot of putting out webinars, doing all the stuff, broadcasting what's going on, how to make it work, how to get access to money, how to furlough your staff, what you can do, what you can't do, all of that stuff. And I think that's changed, actually. So I think that's changed to getting involved in discussions, asking members how they're feeling. Our account management team have never worked so hard as well to make sure that we're communicating, make sure members know what's there for them to have access to. And we've got loads of things called In the Frames, which are small groups of 20, 25 people discussing a topic and what's happening to them. So we've changed the sort of services that we're providing because the view of the market's changing, or the position that everybody was in has changed. And so it's evolved pretty quickly, from broadcasting and making sure everyone was okay and they knew what was going on, to supporting people in different ways.
So how have you seen people adapt in the last 4 weeks, where I think there was a clear protection mode moment, like you said? How much money can we protect? How many people can we furlough? All of that. And I noticed that died down a couple of weeks ago. And then I feel like, with a marketing focus, I feel like a lot of the things I've been talking about to have an online presence is now, everyone's been saying, well, we need to get online, we need to run webinars, we need to have a personal brand. All these things that people weren't necessarily focusing on have been, that's the thing I'm focused on, right? That's what I'm noticing. What sort of decisions or movements are recruitment agencies been making in the last month beyond protection mode?
I think so. So it's absolutely that. Protection mode was absolutely where it was at the beginning. Cash always is king, but boy, did it help in the early days. And I think what's happening now, then it calmed down, then it was business and how do we organise our team and what are we looking at doing with them. And then I think it's gotten to the stage now where people are stepping back and planning beyond. How do we get the team back? How's that going to work? What does 2020 look like? What's 2021 going to look like? And planning further ahead. And so I think there's more of a planning stage. I think people are more calm. And we've got some members that think, the world as we know it is pretty much ended. And others are looking at this as a blip. And I think that probably the real answer to this is going to be somewhere in between. And that will depend on what market you're in and the way you're structured. So we've got, one of our members was speaking with me on a question time scenario that we do. And we had two different members, one of whom had furloughed 70% of their staff, and someone else whom all of their staff had worked from home always. And therefore they didn't really see any difference. They were making more calls to customers, communicating about more contract, it was a contract business, contract requirements than they ever had. So I think this thing has not affected everyone the same, and they certainly haven't responded in the same way. I think over the time frame, this is now a planning stage. And I'll tell you what is interesting. We're finding a lot of members, and one of my staff mentioned it this morning. I have a staff meeting on a Monday morning for everybody. And one of my staff said this morning that they're finding that where a lot of individuals are kind of painting their kitchen or decorating their bathroom or doing a spring clean or whatever, that a lot of the recruitment businesses have come back. They've got into whatever is the new normal for them for this stage, and it means they're looking up doing the jobs they haven't done for a period of time and wanted to. So we've got a number of new members coming into APSCo from people that says, look, I've been meaning to join, I just haven't gotten round to it. And also people wanting to join because they want to be in our lifeboat, I suppose. Yeah. But I do think businesses are calmer. I think they're looking at the future. I think there will be a lot of individual consultants that maybe have been furloughed that are using that time to look at how they start their own business because they always wanted to. And they might think at the end of this is the time to do it. And they've got some time on their hands if they've been furloughed to start planning that. So that's the change. There's the panic, there's the calming down, and then there's the acceptance of what the new reality is at the moment before there becomes the new reality of how we really get back to work.
So that's what my next question was going to be about then. So you obviously are privy to this probably conversation that I'm not in terms of politically what's going on. What's your take on the restrictions being eased next week and potentially how we might move, how recruitment agencies might get back to work, never mind the rest of the economy?
Look, I've got opinions, but I'm not sure they're based on anything stronger that you've got, really, because I'm not sure the government know exactly what they want to do yet. They're waiting to see what the numbers are. They're waiting for the right time. And it's a difficult time frame, it's a difficult decision-making scenario. If they talk about easing restrictions, some people are going to get out of the house now and have a party. If they start the Premier League soon, some people are going to go in the park and all play football because if they're seeing professional footballers do it, why wouldn't they? Will be an attitude. And so I think the government are just weighing up when they do it. I think we are going to be told shortly about how things will be lifted. Yeah. But I don't know what that time frame is, and I'm not sure that Boris Johnson knows what that time frame is at the minute either. It's going to be really related to what information they get from the figures, not of deaths so much, but the figures of people getting COVID-19, because the deaths, are happening from people that got it weeks ago.
Yeah. It's
all and right. So, there's too much of a time delay with regard to that. So are they planning how we come out of it? Without question, as in every business is planning how to come out of it. Do they know exactly the time frame? No, I don't believe they do. We came into this a bit later than a lot of the European countries, and therefore we can look at what they're doing, or look at how preferably not to come out too quickly and then get locked down all over again. I think it will definitely be staggered. I suspect, I don't know for sure, but I suspect they'll open up certain industries before professions, actually. So where factories have been closed, manufacturing market obviously decimated, where the government feel that that can work in a healthy enough with some kind of distancing scenario, I think those are things that they're going to open up first, because you can't do that from home. Where you've got businesses that people can work from home, I think they would rather us stay at home for longer. I look in London, and look, from the APSCo office, we've been working out how we can bring our people back. But if I look at the APSCo office, it's not the problem for me. Even if I bring people in 1 week, half them 1 week, half the next week, or half early week, half late week, or whatever it is getting to the office, it's going to become a problem. Yeah. Because public transport, particularly in London, but around most big cities, is a nightmare. And so where the researchers said only 15% of people using the tube in London is where it needs to be, I mean, it's just a nonsense. How's that ever going to happen, even if 50% of your workers are not there? So we're looking at having more people working at home for a longer period of time.
Yeah, what's your viewpoint on, I've asked this question quite a lot, on how the recruitment industry is going to change in terms of the way they operate? Obviously, there are agencies out there that have operated on a remote or semi-remote basis, but they are definitely the exception, right? So how do you this model of bringing in juniors, growing organically, defining your status by headcount growth and size of office, and I mean, it's always been the way. There's going to be a lot of people who thought this was definitely not for them, and now they've had a taste of, they've been forced into a new world. How do you feel they're going to come back? Do you think it will go back to normal, or do you think the industry, the agencies that we work with, will learn to adapt and hold on to some of that?
I think whenever you have a big jolt like this, things move around. And I think there's some positives that can come out of this. And I think that kind of presenteeism, where you expect someone to be in the office at 8:30, as long as you can see them at your desk, you think they're achieving something. That's been in the market forever, from when I even came to the market as a graduate trainee, for heaven's sake. And so, but I do think there's an opportunity for that to change. And I think that people will be more focused, a lot of them are now, but more focused on activities that are bringing in results, rather than making sure somebody's sitting at a desk. I think that a lot of people, not all people in the recruitment market, have a distrust of whether somebody's actually doing anything when they're at home. And yet, if you look at the recruitment market, it's bloody obvious whether somebody's actually working or not, more obvious than most markets. And so consequently, it could be an easier thing to have more people working from home. I think that becomes more difficult if you're taking in trainees, because if you take in inexperienced trainees, they will learn through training, through formal training in whatever method that's being delivered, but they also learn a bit through osmosis of the person they're sitting next to. If your company has a strong culture, and every company thinks they've got a strong culture, but if they really do, that culture's not only driven from the top, it's backed up by people in the office doing the stuff in the way that the culture suggests is the way to do it. And so consequently, doing all of that and achieving those things from new trainees, having that strong culture, becomes more difficult. Not something that you cannot possibly do, but boy, it's a lot more difficult. So it may be, let's see, that more companies have more people working away. If you look at the big banks, they've been having an environment where people are sharing desks for years, actually. The idea of hot desk in the bank was being talked about, but nowadays people that work in the big banks are often told they can only have a desk in the building 3 or 4 days a week. Yeah. And that they have to spend some time out. And that just doesn't have their little teddy bears or whatever sitting on it. It's a desk that's used by lots of other people that don't want the bloody teddy bears or family photos. And so maybe the recruitment market has that kind of opportunity. There are benefits to that. There are benefits because a lot of the staff, especially the young ones, quite like that environment. There are benefits because it means you can afford smaller offices, which is a cheaper hit for everybody. But then it needs to be managed differently. So I think that the good companies that have the right management team, that have learnt how to manage and be a bit more trusting of people working at home, are going to capitalise on this as a learning experience and broaden what they do.
Yeah, agreed. What do you think recruiters need, or recruitment agency owners need to look out for in the next few months? What do they need to be? Because I'm getting the vibe some are pretty chilled now. It's like, they feel like this news coming out next week is it's all going back to normal. Maybe not from a pure health perspective, but it's just going to be one gradual rise back to where we were. What's your take on what they need to be really thinking about?
Well, I'll tell you what I would say, first of all, with regard to that rise. Some people were saying they thought it was going to be a V, drop off a cliff and come back straight away. I've also heard quite a lot about the sort of Nike logo. So it comes down and goes up, but a bit less steep. Personally, I think it's going to be a bit of a drop, like one of those really old-fashioned leather footballs that got very wet on a winter's day, and it drops, and it really didn't bounce very high at all, rather than like one of the more modern balls that you take a penalty and you sky it. Yeah. So I think that there's going to be a comeback. Again, market sectors are different. I think the comeback for perm is going to be slower than it will for contract. Contract's always a quick bellwether, really, for the whole of the market. So I think contract will come back quicker. I think perm will be much slower because I think the clients that we service are going to be looking at their own infrastructure and whether they can have people working from home or less staff, or maybe more reliant on an agile workforce, that they don't need to look at redundancies. They don't need to look at the way they manage them. But if they have an agile workforce like a contract base, then they don't need to worry so much about that. And so I think that contract will come back. I think that, as it always does, but I think perm will be slower to come back. And that will be, how slow would be dependent on which market you're in, as it always is. As it always is.
What I think as well is that, this whole furloughed workforce could end up just being, well, there's a very good chance there'll be a huge round of redundancies when the furlough ends. What's your take on how long the government will actually support businesses with furlough? How long will they keep that going? Is it a kind of, do you think there's a set time frame when the Treasury will say, look, we can't keep doing this, or are they going to keep rolling and rolling and rolling until they need to?
I think it's somewhere between the two. Do I think there's a set time frame? Not yet. I think they'd like there to be. Again, they've got to see how people can get back to work and when. So I think that depends on the infection rate again and on the R number, all of that kind of stuff. I don't know for sure, but I don't think furlough is going to drop off a cliff either. So I don't think at the end of the June, there's going to be, that's it, nothing else. I think it will stay on for certain sectors. I think pretty obviously hospitality and travel need furlough more than any other sector. And I think there is an opportunity for it to continue, maybe on either in specific sectors or at a lower rate. So nirvana for a lot of companies actually would be if you could furlough people for 50% of the time, so that you could have a workforce that's part-time until they could come up to have full-time amount of work. And I think that would be nirvana. I don't know if the government would do it, but I certainly don't think that furlough is going to drop off the end of a cliff at the end of June for everybody. No, I think it will, some sectors and some people within sectors, whatever else it may be, will have that opportunity for furloughing for longer. Otherwise, all the government have done has delayed the redundancy scenario. But I'll tell you another thing that maybe most of your listeners haven't even thought about. I think in recruitment companies, there are months worth of people that came into recruitment or came to a specific business having already been in recruitment that weren't blissfully happy in that company or in that job or in our industry.
Yeah.
But of course, in the last few months, nobody's leaving anything.
No.
And so I think, because why would they? So I think there will be quite a big lot of movement at some stage soon enough when it gets into getting back to the office. The minute somebody feels there's a potential for them to get a new job, if they're in one that they haven't liked for months but haven't been able to leave, they'll make a move, and either to set their own business up or to move somewhere else. So I think there's going to be a huge drop-off of people that, you know, aren't in their business for much longer, any longer. And I think that there will be quite a lot of movement of consultants toing and froing.
I do agree with that. I think there'll be a couple of reasons, like you just said, if you weren't necessarily happy anyway, and you've had a big break, the mindset to get back into things when the market's recovering, it's slow, will be tricky. Also, I think the way that your business responds to this and how they want to bounce back will affect it. So let's just say, I mean, I've said it on a few episodes. Let's say you've got a young family, early mid-30s, and you've got really used to being at home, whether you've worked from home or been furloughed. And then, you've realized you spend more time with your young family, you're exercising more, you're still productive. And then the boss says, right, well, now you need to get on a train for an hour and a half back into London from 6 a.m. every day or whatever. I just think there's loads of people that are going to say no. Like, I just don't want to do it. I put a status on LinkedIn last week about choice. I think I've really enjoyed parts of lockdown, but the thing that I don't like is the choice that's lacking. Like, I never went to London at the weekend. I live on the end of the Central Line, and I never bothered going in really. But the fact that I can't, I'm craving it. And I think it's the same with going to work 5 days a week. I don't think anyone necessarily thought too much about it, but now they've not had it. If you say to someone, you have to come in 5 days, again, you're taking away choice. So choice is that thing we're craving right now. We just want to have a little bit of choice back. So the businesses that allow the flexibility somehow and keep that trust, like you just said, like if they've been able to build that trusting ability to get the job done, why would you take that away? Why would you go back to old ways? I don't.
But I also think, Sean, that there are some companies that have made the wrong decisions the way they've dealt with this crisis. Some companies have not treated their staff very well. Some companies have gone to suppliers and behaved inappropriately. Some suppliers have behaved inappropriately. And I said again to my staff that we, APSCo, have a brand, and that I want us to have a great brand coming out of this, that we've treated everybody with more service than they ever expected. We've gotten back to them more quickly than they ever dreamt of, that we've treated our suppliers appropriately, and that we've come out of this with a brand of APSCo, and hopefully each company as member or not member have their own pride in the way they have behaved. So we furloughed some of our staff, but really it was people that their job at that moment in time was never going to work. We've communicated them with every day. We've communicated they've done no work because they're not allowed to, and that's fair enough. But I made sure I sent presents out to everybody, actually, saying that I miss them all, because I did miss them, actually. And whether we sent Just Eat vouchers, they could have dinner on us and things like that. That haven't been difficult to do, although getting the Just Eat for 30-odd people is a pain in the bum, to be honest. But anyway, we've managed it, and we've been having our WhatsApp groups and all of that, which means that when the time comes for everybody to be back, we still feel a team. Yeah. And I'm not sure every company have thought about managing their staff and looking after their staff as well as some have done. And so I am not, from APSCo, not going to lose any staff. No need to do that, and definitely no desire. We've got a team of people. I don't want to lose anybody in that team, and they know it. So they've all, even new people in the team, they felt secure. They know what's going on. We've communicated absolutely everything. And therefore, I'm looking forward to, and from the communication that I get from my team, they're really excited for us all to be together again. I'm not sure every company out there can say the same of their team. No. And I think that it's in these kind of situations, you have moments of truth, don't you, about how you behave as an individual or a manager or a leader or whatever, and or as a staff member, how you behave then, and therefore hopefully how people will respond to you as this moves on. And I think there are a lot of companies that need to query their behaviour, actually, to their staff, to their suppliers, to everybody else out there.
Yeah, I'd say I completely agree. I mean, on the whole, our clients have been amazing. They've been so supportive, and we had the initial conversations around what we can do to help, and costs and all sorts of things with a lot of them. But I guess it's the type of businesses we work with. They're very progressive in their mindset. They're already investing in marketing and brand and comms, and so most of them have taken this to be an opportunity. Like one of our clients is now running a weekly webinar, which is getting over 1,000 candidates on there now every week. I mean, we knew their brand was strong, but actually COVID-19 has shown us how powerful their brand is, because all of their market is just drawn to them, and sometimes it's not even like there's no big guests or anything. It's their brand just talking about support, things in their sector, and it's been amazing to see. And before we go, tell us a bit more about why someone should join APSCo. I mean, I know of APSCo, but a lot of my listeners are going to be that really early stage startup organizations, so they might be a year or two in. Some will have had support from people like yourself, and others won't. So tell us, why would they look at reaching out to you guys now, and what benefits would they get?
Wow, I mean, that definitely sounds like a sales opportunity to me. So thank you. I didn't expect that. Look, the reality is, in times of trouble, it's useful to have a lifeboat. But in times of growth, it's useful to have someone to lean on that knows this market like the back of their hand to work out the right way to grow. And APSCo has been going for 20 years. We set up specifically in the professional market and then expanded to be international. As I said, we've got offices in different places around the world. With a view, we know that in the professional markets, people don't open branches in the UK. They go into new sectors, new specializations, new niches. And so we are across that professional space. And actually such a high percentage of my staff have come from the recruitment market. So we know it's in our DNA, is what we say. And what we look to do is being the voice of the professional market, to support the professional market from a business point of view in everything they do and support that quality. And then help our members market themselves by being high quality and delivering the services that their customers and their candidates need. And so consequently, it's a coming together of like minds with APSCo. Plus, for anyone who's starting up, I mean, all of the T's and the C's and the contracts and all of that stuff saves a fortune. And ours are best of breed. We've spent fortunes on doing that. The legal helpline, the financial helplines, tax helpline, the insurance helplines, all these different helplines we've got that help staff. And of course, we're pretty high touch. So before all of this, we had 130 member meetings in the UK a year. Yeah. That's pretty high touch. And therefore, there are subjects, people don't need to come to everything, but they can come to whatever they want to do and learn and discuss with other members, some of whom have got a bigger business or a smaller business, what to do differently or what to carry on doing in the same way. And so consequently, it's a real community, the APSCo thing. People wear badges actually, and you can go out there and meet other APSCo people, and it's just an easy thing to do. And so consequently, I think people say, it's easy for me to say why they should join. I think why people join is a different reason for why they stay, funnily enough. So people join often because they want the legal helpline, or they join because they want the T's and C's if it's a small business. If it's a big business, it's because they want to be involved in the lobbying scenario to dictate some of what's going on future-wise. Why do they stay? They stay because they feel that they can get everything they need from being an APSCo member, and that the APSCo staff will give them anything they need to help them out. And so we're high touch. It's kind of different to any other trade body.
You're talking 2.5 sessions a week being run across the country. I mean, that's a hell of a lot. And if someone does want to reach out, who's the best person they should contact?
Well, if they just come to apsco.org, to the website, or speak to Rena.Durban, Durban, Durban, at apsco.org. She'll help them out. Or they can send me an email, ann.swain@apsco.org. Of course, we'll help them out. And even if they're not a member and they're concerned about certain things and we've got stuff that can help them, why don't they just email us? We'll help them out. It's not an issue.
Wicked. Well, look, Anne, thank you so much for giving up your time today. Hopefully, I've I've enjoyed it anyway. Hopefully you've enjoyed it, and you're almost at the point where your gin and tonic's being poured. So you got about an hour and 15. You've got an hour and 15 minutes till you can.
Oh, I need to wait, Sean. I need to wait till 5 on the dot.
I'd start chopping the cucumbers in the next 15 minutes.
I'm a definite lemon lime person.
Really? Oh, my wife would disagree. Well, look, hopefully, hopefully people do reach out. I'll tag you in all the content that goes out with this episode, and people ask for help. But thank you so much. I know on behalf of my listeners that they'll appreciate it. And guys, thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Rag Report. As I always say at the end of the show, please do, I don't ask for any money. I ask for you to do one thing, which is share this episode with someone who you think would need it. So whether it's a colleague, a friend, a boss, even a competitor, get that out via WhatsApp, text, email, or LinkedIn and share to people, because together we will get through this. We'll be stronger. I'll be back again tomorrow with another story from another senior person across the industry. In the meantime, stay safe. I'll see you soon.